Clay, I saw a crazy thing on the internet the other day. You wouldn't believe it.
You don't say.
A piece that argued that Star Trek. They were talking about the future of Star Trek. I think the website is called like the Soul of Star Trek. They were arguing that they're very happy with Discovery, and Discovery being the franchise, the flag bearer, the flame, the torch bearer, whatever, if you want to go into that kind of thing of the Star Trek. And they were concerned about Lower Decks. Very concerned about Lower Decks being poisonous to the franchise and not the way that this franchise needs to go. And then I guess another way to tie this into this week's stuff, I saw a lot of people upset about the humor in one of the episodes that we're going to talk about today. So I think this will branch more into the area we go when I talk about these episodes, because I have concerns about what I can remember from these episodes, not for some like car accident reason or anything like that, but I think Lower Decks suffers in a unique way compared to everything else. But I just I find it hard to believe that it's the problem with the franchise at this point. I think there are bigger problems than Lower Decks here. We've talked about that before, but I don't know if you read that piece or you saw it. You probably didn't even see it.
I saw that you posted it.
But do you have any thoughts about
Discovery? I saw that you posted it, and I kind of skimmed it. And once I saw what the thesis was, I very quickly clicked away from it.
They got that click.
Yeah, well, that was your fault.
They got rewarded. They got. You should get. I think there's probably some sort of reward for like the amount of time spent on a page where you're like, oh, I'm actually enjoying this content, instead of, oh my god, this is a Rickroll parody.
Well, you can on YouTube, you can tell how long someone sticks with your video, right? Like what like views,
and they reward you based on how long people stay. So YouTube cares.
Views
about that
don't necessarily equal people staying there. So if you have a blog or a news site or whatever that you're getting a lot of clicks, but everybody's there for less than a minute, it's probably not the best content.
Today we're going to be talking about We'll Always Have Tom Paris and Mugato Gumato. So the first one, We'll Always Have Tom Paris, is the third episode of the second season of Star Trek Lower Decks. Came out on August 26, 2021. Written by M. Willis, the mysterious M. Willis, just an initial. Directed by Bob Suarez. In-universe date unknown, 2381. In this episode, Mariner and Tendi team up for a mission to retrieve an heirloom for Dr. T'Ana. Meanwhile, the Cerritos is visited by Lieutenant Tom Paris, much to the excitement of Boimler, who's hoping to meet him. While all this happens, Rutherford is haunted by the mystery surrounding the reappearance of a familiar presence on the Cerritos. The second episode we're going to be talking about, because we talk about 2 episodes of Lower Decks each podcast, is Mugato Gumato. This is the 4th episode of the second season. Came out on September 2nd, one day after my birthday, 2021. This one was written by Ben Rogers, the more traditionally named Ben Rogers, and directed by Jason
I
Zurek.
like Ben Rogers because of his transparency. You know what you're getting when you get a Ben Rogers script. You see the full name.
That's a good full use of the alphabet. No hesitation to just really draw your eye.
What is this name. M whoever hiding? That's what we're going to be finding out on the next 3 episodes of the Penske Files.
In-universe date is 58036.4-2381. In this one, Mugato Gumato, the USS Cerritos is dispatched to a planet to investigate an unexplained sighting of the dangerous Mugato. So,
and that's
again, we're going to be. I think
is Zoolander, Will Ferrell's character in Zoolander's Mugato, right? I think. I assume that's just
I'll have to take your word for it.
It's just a funny name. I don't think there's any coincidence.
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, there's definitely
just a coincidence. Did he have a horn?
No horn.
Did he have a horn?
No
in that
horn
movie?
in the movie.
Not even like the British euphemism of having a horn.
No, he had a dog.
Not particularly sexy.
He had
character.
a dog that he demanded you obey, but aside from that, no horn.
So, as always, there's no real. I don't think there's any real rhyme or reason to go through these specifically in order. But here's something I've noticed about these episodes, and particularly the Tom Paris episode. I don't know what it says about Lower Decks, and I don't even mean this to be a real criticism. I have a hard time remembering what happens in some of these episodes. Actually, like I watched the first one, Tom Paris, 2 days ago, and honestly, rereading the little blurb is what reminded me what's in that episode more than anything. I found that one pretty forgettable. I remember the Mugato one just because it's the only episode that I think I've ever laughed out loud at, and it was only the one joke, and it's the stupid joke that everyone is like up in arms about whether or not this is Star Trek, where the Mugatos are fucking each other and Boimler's stuck in the tree. I did laugh at that. I thought that was funny. So that's where we stand. And that's where I am as a person. What did you think about these? Which one do you want to start with? Tom Paris or Mugato, Gumato?
Well, I for one cannot wait to understand the context of this Tom Paris episode when we finally get into Voyager, or Voy, as they say on the show.
Oh, sure. Well, he's actually not even that important in the episode, which is kind of strange. He's just a guy who shows up.
I actually liked both of these pretty well. I think the first one doesn't really pull it together until I think the last couple minutes of the first one, of the Tom Paris one, are better than the rest of it. I thought the Boimler stuff, for the most part, was pretty forgettable, of just having him schlepping through a Jeffries tube. But I liked the payoff. I liked him getting his ass kicked by Tom Paris. That was fun. I really enjoyed Tendi and Mariner going off together, and you get to learn more about Tendi and stuff, and you get to see the Orion culture a little bit more. Again, this show's doing more to tell us about the Orions than any other show has up to this point.
With that Enterprise episode hasn't come out yet, and it won't for like a month, but it'll make more sense when that comes. We've talked about the Orions already, so it's funny that they've in a recent Enterprise episode we talked about the Orions, and so it was funny that they pop up here again. The show and the franchise returning to them. Mariner and Tendi was funny because I feel like the show clearly, the writers clearly listened to the podcast, because we were complaining about how they weren't mixing up the pairings of the characters on the first season enough. And this one, they not only do it, but they draw attention to the fact that they hardly ever did it in the first season by saying, well, it would just be kind of fun to do something original with you. And that's never happened before. And why not? This
one was very hyper meta, like more so than I think a lot of the other ones have been. They're calling Voyager Voy. They are pulling out the commemorative plates like that you would buy off of the Home Shopping Network in 1998. They're drawing attention to...
Writers' Room were tweeting pictures of their commemorative plates.
Oh, really?
I think some of the writers have those plates, which is...
commenting on how characters will just come back from the dead. Does that really happen that much in this show? I didn't really think...
No, not enough for it to act like it's just something that you can just... No one will ask any questions
As someone who's been waiting, at this point, 33 years for Tasha Yar to magically come back, I don't think that many people come back from the dead.
Much like Jesus at 33.
I would happily... never mind. I didn't really think that was so much of a trope in this show of people getting killed and coming back.
No.
I did like the breakdown that Rutherford has, where he sees all the possibilities of how he may have been brought back. I thought that was fun. That story, I think that story was a little bit better than the Boimler one, just because they were kind of doing some more fun stuff. But I think the Tendi and Mariner story really worked the best, and I did like when Tendi makes the comment that not all Orions are slavers and pirates, and then she says they can go visit their cousin who works in a slave den as a pirate, or whatever. But I thought the payoff to that was I liked that story because it was a ball rolling type story where they kept getting deeper and deeper into having the problem, where it's like they get the thing, they break the thing, they go to fix the thing, they break it worse, then they get further, they break it worse, and along the way they're learning more about each other, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I did really enjoy the punchline at the end where the doctor only wanted the box because she's a cat. I think that was pretty funny.
Right. Yeah.
The other one, the second one, let's stick to the first one, just because I don't know, the first one didn't click with me too much. I don't know why.
I didn't think it was particularly. I don't think any of the plots really stuck out to me as something that I was like, oh, this is good and this is interesting. Like as you were saying, I thought that the Rutherford and Shrax thing was playing on a joke that I don't think the franchise makes at all. Like I don't think that's a problem with this franchise, and bringing him back is kind of. It's what you're saying. It's like more of the most meta episode possible, where it's just they were really making fun of the tropes of things in that episode in a way that I felt like is sometimes a weakness of the show, where when it just relies on Star Trek jokes. I think that's not really the best way that the show wants to go. I think it needs to work more on its character stuff, which the Mariner and Tendi thing felt like it was an opportunity to do. I guess I just found their storyline a little bit unremarkable.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, like I just didn't. Nothing about it stuck out to me in a way that none of the other lower decks away missions have gone. I felt similar to all of them, and not in a way that I'm like, oh, I can really enjoy what the characters are doing here. So I don't know how much I have to say about that one, other than the only other thing is I was really surprised by how little Tom Paris has to do with anything at all. He's just kind of a glorified cameo in it. And I don't know, like those are I don't know if that's an actor having no time to do it or something, but I feel like that's moments where the show could really shine, when it brings back other older Star Trek characters and uses them for an episode. And it just feels like the actors, sometimes they're only there for like 10 minutes and they have them record 3 lines and then they throw it into the episode. Yeah. It's just not, it just doesn't stick with me. And it feels a little bit underwhelming when they tend to do things like that.
I was also kind of surprised that Paris didn't have more to do, especially because the episode's named after him, right? It's to Tom Paris.
So it's a reference to a Teen G episode in the first season. We'll always have Paris. I guess he worked for what he was there for, but what he was there for wasn't particularly interesting. They didn't even take the opportunity to when he comes onto the bridge, the captain makes a joke when he's like, "Oh, can I take her for a spin?" She's like, "Yeah, just don't get us stranded in the Delta Quadrant." I thought they were going to cut back to him and be like, "You fucking asshole!" Like I haven't heard that. Or it's just traumatic.
Yeah, or that. Yeah, that would have been good too. I was kind of surprised that they left that joke on the table. But
there's more to do with that stuff. You know, that's why it's. And it's tough because I've also criticized the show for if it stuck too much with that stuff. I'd be like, come on, like come up with some new material. And so when the show tries to do it, and I'm equally like, oh, I wish they had done more of those other jokes. I understand them being sort of contradictory in what I want. It's just that I don't think either of the angles worked super well in this episode. So that's why it was like, I don't know where to go from here. If both of them are just a B- to me, what do you do with that?
I think I would say that the Tendi and Mariner stuff is more of a B for me. I think that definitely stood out as the stronger storyline. But again, this one was weird because I was watching it with my girlfriend. We both had the same response. At the end, we were like, "I like that." It didn't. She actually turned to me and she said, "I wasn't really sure about this one when it started." And I said, "Yeah, it really kind of comes together in the last few minutes." And I think that's the case with this one. Is it doesn't. The last few minutes kind of pays everything off really well, but some of the road to get there seems a little bit, forgettable in some areas.
So Mugato, and then we can combine these two. Mugato, the joke is getting all the coverage of it that I've seen is like, is this a road too far for Star Trek with this Mugato having sex
when
jokes?
Discovery showed up, Discovery showed up, you had that scene where fucking Ash Tyler gets raped by a Klingon, and there's tits in it, and people are swearing, and guts are getting pulled out, and someone tells Picard to go fuck himself or whatever. Everyone's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that your sensibilities were so fragile there when it comes to Star Trek."
Not your grandfather's Star Trek, gentlemen.
This is not
your grandfather's Star Trek.
There's no reason someone can't do that in the adult Star Trek of the 21st century. And someone makes an orgy dick joke, and all of a sudden it's like, Gene would never let this fly. Come on, give me a fucking break.
No, it's a lot of
Pick
pearl
one.
clutching. I don't really know why. It is by far the joke that I laughed at the hardest, and it's not even specific to Star Trek. It's just kind of I think the editing goes a long way for me in that one. The franticness of their scene is pretty it's pretty comical, and like them being stuck in that log and being rolled around is like nothing is being shown, but the Mugatos are clearly like changing position or something outside, and the whole thing is just shaking, and the editing's very funny. I found it I don't know, I just think that it took a risk in a way that I think the show is sometimes not really inclined to do, and I don't even know. I guess it is risky because of the pushback they got against it, but I don't think it's like a unpredictable joke or a joke that's like super novel.
No,
really, it's
no.
like you've kind of seen stuff like that on different animated shows. So it was fascinating.
I think someone on the Discord mentioned that they actually made a very similar joke on an episode of Rick and Morty, or there was some connection where someone knew what the joke was going to be because of something they saw on Rick and Morty. I apologize for not being able to cite that more completely. It is probably the most out there joke they've done, but it doesn't seem out of character for this show the way I think some of that other stuff feels out of character. Like, because I think you could if you want to criticize it, I think you can level probably the same critique against this as we have leveled against Discovery and Picard, which is like this. Star Trek has always been a show that I feel like I could watch with my kids and it would be fine. Yeah. Like, Doctor Who kind of.
Yes. There's no worries about what kind of content you're going to run into.
And this, I don't know. I feel like I'm more okay with this, I think, than I am the other stuff that they're doing. Maybe animation goes a long way of kind of like smoothing that stuff out. And also it is played for laughs, and they're not really doing anything that graphic. They're just kind of making a stupid joke about it. It's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's that thing of what it does is like a joke like that challenges what you fundamentally believe about the show being a canon show that exists in the Star Trek universe.
Okay.
Right? Like,
when you started that
that
sentence, I was going to be, come on, Wes, it's a dick joke. It's not fundamentally challenging anything. Okay.
Well, it makes you think. I guess that if you're going to get upset about that joke, the reason you would get upset is because if you were making a consistent argument, you would say that, well, I don't like that in Picard and I don't like it in Discovery either, because I don't think that's what this franchise is usually about, and I don't think that it's in its best interest. I think it works. The argument works better there. I would sort of buy that argument. But to me, it just comes back to the fact that Lower Decks doesn't really feel like it's in the real Star Trek universe. Yeah. It doesn't feel like there's that connection. Yeah. So I'm okay with them doing weirder stuff with it. But it all comes like, and that feels a very arbitrary, silly line to draw. But I do think it's just because it's animated that it's like, well, they can do whatever they want. This is an animated show. Who cares? Like,
and it doesn't feel out of place with the show. Like, I think the other stuff on Discovery and Picard feels like they're trying too hard to be edgy and trying too hard to be like, how do we compete with HBO? It's like, well, you're not supposed to. You're fucking Star Trek. You're not Game of Thrones,
Yes. Yeah.
We don't. If they introduced a Romulan incest storyline on Lower Decks, as long as it was hilarious, I'd have no problem with it.
Yeah, it'd be fine. Yeah, you should bring those characters on if they're going to make fun of Picard like they did in the last episode, or we thought that they might be making fun of that kind of an idea. Just bring the Romulan incest siblings along, and that'll be fine. The Mugato one. Do you know the basic joke here? It might be a Star Trek deep cut. Do you understand why they keep calling the Mugato the wrong name?
I do. I assume across different series or episodes, people say it differently, but that's all I do. I don't know. My
understanding, they appear in the I forget what the name of it's the war episode where the Kirk and Bones go to a planet that the Klingons are supplying arms to. It's like a Vietnam allegory. And the Mugato is a creature there, but it's credited in the end of the episode as a Gumato. But all through the episode, apparently DeForest Kelley could not say Gumato, and he kept miscalling it a Mugato instead. So all the characters are calling it different things in the episode, funny. And then it's credited as another thing that's nothing. So that's kind of the joke here. The running joke that they have in the episode is that every character, every time they say the word, pronounces it somewhat differently from the person who said it.
I like that,
which is fine.
I like that Shrek said it differently 3 times in a row in one scene.
Yes, one scene. He's the Mugato tracker, I guess, as well too. See, so how do you feel about him eating the poop joke?
It's fine. It doesn't.
That's the same. Is that the same as the Mugato one? I found that one a little bit less. I was like, I don't need this joke. This doesn't feel necessary.
Yeah, I mean, again, it didn't feel out of character for the show. It seems like the kind of thing they would do.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
This episode.
I guess my point is just how subjective.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are some jokes that are going to work better for other people. Like, as much as you liked the dick joke, the sex joke, I think my favorite thing in this episode was the bartender on the Cerritos, who's apparently from Maine, who's got that really thick Fred Gwynn in Pet Sematary Maine accent, where he's talking about how Mariner is actually a Black Ops Starfleet member. I thought that was good. I like that guy a lot.
It reminded me strongly. South Park does that joke a lot. They have the kids will go to some place, and there's the guy who the mechanic who works at the gas station on the road to nowhere. He comes out, don't go down that road. You don't want to know what's down that road. Don't go down there. It reminded me of that. I think South Park executes it a little bit better when they do it. I think that's a strength of their sort of writing and sensibility. So here it felt a little derivative, I guess. I don't know what the original reference to something like that would be, but it reminded me of South Park, maybe unfairly. They should bring that bartender character back.
Oh, he's my favorite character on the show now. I like that guy a lot.
Yeah. He felt different to me. Did he feel different to you as a character? Is it a South Park kind of humor there, sensibility? He felt like he was a different character who didn't really exist in their Lower Decks world, and that's what made me interested.
Yeah, no, it feels like a character built for a joke. It's not a character that's, much like a South Park character in that regard. It doesn't necessarily fit into anything that's going on, but it's built specifically for that joke that they're trying to do with it.
Yeah. I hope he comes back. He's there's room for the bartender character on this series to be worth something, because they spent a lot of time in whatever their version of 10 Forward is or whatever.
He reminds me a little bit, not in the way he acts, but in the impact that he makes, of Ed O'Neill's character in Wayne's World as the guy who works at the donut shop. Top five comedy film character for me. Always been a big fan of explaining how when the Indians believe when a man got stabbed, the steam rising from his body in the snow was actually his soul.
Yeah. Maybe he doesn't. This guy doesn't ascend to Ed O'Neill levels in Wayne World, but a decent side jaunt. I don't know. I just find it's not that I don't like Lower Decks, but I feel like you're getting into the series. Would you even say that you're getting into the series in any kind of substantial way? I feel disconnected from it for some reason. One of the reasons I don't really enjoy podcasting about it is because I think it's a very difficult series to look at with any sense of there's a point to talking about it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to you? It's not trying to do anything other than be a joke animated series show. And so it's hard to gauge it as how well it's doing when that's all that there is to be done with it, and there's nowhere else to really take the storylines. Because it's now into its second season in decent ways. It's not really ever going to be a show, I think, that focuses on like the mission or the thing of the episode that the characters focus on. It's too high energy for that in a way that animated shows have to be. So I don't know. It leaves me in this place where I don't think it's a bad series at all or anything like that, but it's hard to talk about in a lot of ways.
I've been really enjoying it. I actually think I like it more. I think I like the stories more than I like the meta stuff, actually.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I don't like the meta stuff, but I don't think it, for me, lives or dies by any of that stuff, mainly because, like, they're throwing so much of it at you that I don't even, like, get a third of it. So I just kind of focus in on what the story is that they're telling, and structurally if it's working for me. Like, I think this second one I enjoyed because I thought it was a good use of the Ferengi, and I love the fact that they defeat the Ferengi at the end by doing a PowerPoint presentation showing them how they could make more money by not killing the Mugato, which I thought was brilliant. And it paid off. It was like a double joke because the game that they're playing at the beginning, the diplomacy game, was a nice hit for me because, as I've said before, one thing that I traditionally always disliked about Star Trek was how much of it was just boring diplomacy, at least in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, it felt like a joke custom made for you. Yeah, the joke is that they're playing diplomacy and they both make a final compromise that neither one is happy with, and that's the definition of diplomacy.
Yeah. And it also worked for me because those types of board games, I think, are what I associate a lot of. That's what I associate a lot of board games with now too. Is just like, there's no winner. It takes forever to play, and you're kind of disappointed when you get to the end of it.
And it looks like a million pieces in a thick rule book on that game.
And then to bring that back and use that as the way to defeat the Ferengi by talking them into a better money making operation, I thought was pretty smart. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. I don't even know. Like, I don't know where I would. It's a tough thing to say just because I wouldn't really change anything about this show. Like, I think in an ideal world, I think the characters would be a little bit better than they are. I think we talked about in the prior episode. I see them a little bit as a slightly more sketched out version of the bartender, which they're characters who are sort of built for joke delivery. And some of it comes down to like the Rutherford story in the first episode is a joke about trying to figure out how Shreks came back to life. And you never, not that I need some like hyper emotional story, but I never get a sense that Rutherford is connected to that other than he was the character who saw him die. So he's the character who gets this story that goes on this way. There's no building of this joke and these jokes in this storyline is going to tell you something about the Rutherford and Shrek's relationship. It never comes to that, and the show doesn't really want that to be the case. Yeah. But when it gets to the end and there's no real resolution either way, I'm left a little bit empty. And I mentioned it before. I don't know if it's fair to compare this series to Arrested Development, but Arrested Development, I always felt like the characters were real people, and even though it's a joke a minute kind of thing. And I think the best comedies, the characters always feel at least like either dark mirrors of real people or real people. They feel like that's why everyone likes Friends. You want to hang out with these people. Yeah. It's that kind of a thing. And even Rick and Morty, which is more closely analogous to this one. Whenever I see that, those guys are hyper exaggerated versions of real people. Right. There's a core to their relationship. I don't feel that in this show yet, and I wonder how much of that is going to be a problem going forward, or if it's just never going to be interested in developing. Yeah,
no, I would agree with that. I think one of the brilliant things about Rick and Morty is how over the top it can be, but how it is still can be very emotionally resonant and character resonant. Like they can break your heart with 3 lines of dialogue in that show. It's really amazing how well written that show can be. I think part of the problem here, especially like in episodes like the Tom Paris one, is you don't have an A story to B story. You've got an A story, B story, and a C story. And so your A story, which I would call the Tendi and Mariner story, even though that's not the name of the episode, I call it the A story because it gets the most time, and it does the most.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time with those characters, and I think you get. I wouldn't say you. I don't think they quite get there, as far as really making some character or emotional statement with those characters, but I think it's closer than the other two, and I think that's just because of how much time on screen it gets. Since you've got 3 stories running at the same time, you've got one that gets the most push, and then the other 2 don't really have a lot of room to do much. I mean, if it were me,
I guess I'd even disagree. I guess I'd even. To me, the Mariner and Tendi thing, I didn't feel like they ended up in a totally different place from where they started by the end of it. I didn't feel like it was I felt it was more the joke of pairing them because they've never been paired together is the entire point of that plot line between the 2 of them. And again, it's not that I'm saying this has to be some sort of like deep-seated interpersonal, like deep conversation thing that they have where they completely revise their vision. But there's like, you'd imagine there would be something there that they would connect on seriously. And I think that that's what a lot of great modern comedies do, even when they're this joke a minute kind of thing, is that they'll have a sort of pathos at the end of something that you can connect on. And even if they subvert it later on, you still feel that the pathos is genuinely emotional, and the show just kind of has to make a joke, and it's good that they make the joke because that's what they want to do. But you do feel that there's like a real center to the relationship between the 2 characters. I don't get that between Tendi and Mariner. They just feel like they're the pieces that got paired together in this story.
Well, if you compare that story to something like there's an early episode of The Simpsons where Bart is failing at school, so he asks Martin to be his tutor, and in return for being his tutor, Bart will teach Martin how to be a badass, basically. And what the 2 end up doing is essentially switching roles, where Bart starts doing a lot better at school, and Martin starts doing worse at school and becoming like a bad kid. And it ultimately kind of drives them both to realize that that's not the place that either of them wants to be. And it ends with, if I remember correctly, it ends with Martin doing something that is very bad at school, within the realm of The Simpsons, very bad, like spray painting Principal Skinner as a butthead on the wall or something. And when it comes to who takes the fall, Bart takes the fall for Martin. And so there's this understanding of what their roles are and how neither one wants to be in the other one's shoes, and there's kind of like a mutual respect and that kind of stuff. That's kind of what they're driving.
And it's also, Bart also saves Martin there,
right?
Which is Bart does it for selfish reasons, but he saves Martin through the actions that he chooses to do. So there's kind of there is like a good heart to what he does at the end there, even though it gets him back to where he wants to be.
I think it works on 2 levels for Bart, because he's doing it. Yeah, he's doing it to break out of the place that he is, but he's also doing it because he realizes that this isn't for Martin. This is not where Martin should be. So he's taking the bullet to get them back to where they started. That seems like kind of what they were sort of going at, but they don't really commit to that in this episode. And I'm not saying it's like a 1-to-1 comparison, but my point of bringing that up is like that Simpsons episode gets you a lot of character and gets you a lot of heart out of a situation where you have this odd couple pairing. And at the end of this one, I don't feel like there's any sort of I don't feel that kind of understanding happening here. It's just Mariner. They kind of share a bit of oh, I guess we're better friends than we used to be now, and then Mariner just takes the fall for it and goes into the brig. So it doesn't really go all the way that I think it could. And the other two stories, I think
Boimler.
So I was just gonna say the other two stories I think are the Rutherford one in particular is hampered by, I don't think they know what they're trying to get out of that, aside from just this joke about it being you don't want to know how these people come back to life. I think there's more in there to play with as far as, why does Rutherford want to know this? What does he gain from knowing that? Like, I feel like the character turn in that, or the character climax, is that Rutherford realizes that he doesn't need to know. And so he just, when Shrax is ready to tell him, he's like, you know what? How about we don't do this, or something like that? I don't know. But it's all just driving to the joke of what actually happens being too horrible to comprehend.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not even sure it's a joke that, or a trope that Star Trek really buys into, but I just feel that the bringing of the character back in more of a character-driven show, there would be more of a there would be some sort of terror in Shrax coming back for Rutherford. Like, if he had been an awful superior officer to him or something, or the boss, and there was a kind of like antagonistic relationship between them, but there's really no relationship between those two characters. Right. So there's not any kind of emotional response that Rutherford can have to him coming back beyond the mystery of how is this happening to people. And I think that a better written comedy, or a comedy that feels like it has multiple layers going on it, at least, would have a kind of personal reason for Rutherford to be so concerned and consumed by what has happened to Shrax, outside of just why did this happen and how does this happen?
Yeah.
But it's that kind of a thing. And I don't even know if it's a fair criticism, because I think that the show succeeds in not doing that. But I think to really hit that next gear, all the great comedies that I can think of tend to do that, except for maybe Seinfeld, where that's kind of the point, is that there is no connection there to be ruined. But most of the other shows always make you feel something that way. Even cold, horrible shows like Peep Show, the British show, where the characters are awful to each other, there is a sense that they are their only best friends with each other. They hate each other, but they are each other's best friends at the same time. And so there's you get the understanding of why they treat each other the way that they do.
I think what I might have done differently with that storyline is, especially in an episode like this one, where they seem to be playing off of popular opinions or comments on tropes and stuff in Star Trek, or just in general popular culture. What I would have done is, when Rutherford sees that Shrax is back, and they're like, "What do you? Well, how could I saw him die? How can he come back?" And they're like, "Oh, the main bridge crew always come back." I would have that break something in Rutherford and have him be like, "Well, then nothing matters." And then he starts going off on stops doing his job, or starts becoming a ne'er-do-well on the ship or something, because it doesn't matter, because because people can just come back from the dead, so I don't have to do any. You know what I mean? Because that's the big critique anytime this happens in something, right? It's like, well, if people come back from the dead, then nothing matters.
I feel there's also the joke there where he, realizing that death is not forever, takes incredible risks but never gets killed by the risks. Like a Mr. Magoo sequence where he's just walking through a phaser fight and never gets hit or anything like that, and it's just because of this false belief that he is immortal.
And then you can have the turnaround at the end be where he has some sort of conversation with Shrax or whatever, or if you wanted to, you could pull a landfill and have Shrax pull him aside and be like, "I'm actually not Shrax. I'm Shrax's brother. Shrax is very dead. There's no coming back." And then have that instill the fear, instill the fear back into Rutherford.
Yeah. On a simpler level, do you like the fact that Shrax came back?
Whatever. I mean, it's a weird choice. I don't know.
Yeah, he's he's an like I guess I don't really mind. I think the character has potential to be funny. I've seen glimpses of him being very funny in his sort of over the top. It's mostly the voice actor performance I think is pretty good. I think what's strange about it is that the show went through a lot of the show basically storm-fronted all the changes that the end of the first season made to the show. And it was like, never mind, we don't actually want to do any of that stuff. We're just going to reboot everything and bring it back. Whether that's a commentary on the reset button, it does feel that they just... I guess it doesn't feel like a reset button because they've done it over like 3 episodes where they've just decided that they just want to bring everything back and go back to the way that it was in the first season. And in a bigger case like Boimler's, I think they could have exploited Boimler on the Titan more than they did. I don't think that well was dry, but I know that they want to get him back to the ship and be with the other main characters.
Which is
so Shrek's feels like a minor version.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think, if I remember correctly, Shrek's dying, I think, was one of our favorite parts of the season. Like that episode, I think we both really liked because there were actual stakes at play and people were actually getting killed. Yeah. And not to say that death needs to happen all the time, but like it was like they actually took a step forward with stuff. And so to bring him back,
it was a little bit surprising too. I wasn't expecting a main character, he's semi-main, but he's like a secondary character to be killed on this show. The animated show in particular is a weird choice.
And so like bringing him back, I don't know. Yeah, it does. It does feel weird because like I never really. It wasn't like I was missing that character at all, and they weren't like talking about him at all. So having him come back is an odd choice. And the Boimler stuff, I feel like you're kind of seeing in real time how bringing Boimler back to the Cerritos might have been a mistake because he's been back for, what is this, 4 episodes now? He's been back for 3 of them, and his storyline has been consistently the worst storyline on the show because they haven't really been pairing him up with people. They've been doing a lot of Boimler by himself stuff, and it's not really working.
Yes. Well, he's mostly just he's the Star Trek fans' avatar in this world, right? He tends to have those plot lines where he has the commemorative plate and he's Tom Paris and stuff. He doesn't. For me, his biggest weakness is the same as everyone else, is that he doesn't feel fleshed out enough as a character where you can give him a storyline like that and it's clearly obvious to me what his point will be in that, or like his POV will be towards something. He generally just treats Star Trek trivia as impressive and then gets somehow undermined in his quest to do it. That's his storyline.
It's fascinating from a story or from a series and writing standpoint too, because the first season he's very much front and center as this sort of avatar for the audience, and so he is involved in everything. And this season so far he really hasn't been. And the other characters on the show in season 1, I think, stayed afloat by them being a little bit more well drawn than Boimler, because Boimler is just sort of like the delivery mechanism for everything else. And once you move,
the Jason Bateman character.
And once you move in this season to telling stories that are more focused on the other characters, the fact that Boimler is less clearly drawn or less interestingly drawn makes him really kind of fall to the back, I think. Because like I think this one, I think the Mugato episode is probably the best one. And has nothing really to do with him as much as the season so far. It doesn't have so much to do with him than it does that he's paired with Rutherford and they do something interesting and have an interesting outcome to their story. Yeah,
the other tangent to what that was about Boimler is that if you had told me that Boimler was going to be backseated a little bit, I would say, oh, Mariner steps up and becomes the primary character of the show then. And I don't think she actually has. I think that there's kind of a leadership void in the main 4. Like there's no one that's really the character that everything circles around. And I think it's kind of helpful to have that in some ways. I think it gives you a sense of like when you're breaking these stories, this is the character who drives the action to go back to the Bateman, like the Jason Bateman Arrested Development is just the stray character who gets inserted into the scenes and is almost always present to allow for the other craziness to happen around him. And they don't have that anymore.
You know,
and no
I don't necessarily know if that is the case for me, because I do think that you can drive these stories with whoever the story is about. I don't think I think this series does better at divvying up story driving than say Discovery does, because Discovery's got Michael in every scene of every episode to the point where it's like suffocating.
Sure. And
this one, Lower Decks has done a pretty good job of making everybody potentially a story driving character. Because it felt like it was going to be the Beckett Mariner show, especially after the first season. But yeah, it really hasn't become that. She hasn't stepped up, and I think that stops the characters from getting too annoying. Because I think if it was every week, it was Boimler at the forefront and Mariner getting them into goofy trouble.
Henpecking.
Yeah, I think then it gets boring and repetitive. But I think so far they've done pretty well at kind of divvying up who's taking the reins a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think Mariner is fundamentally constructed to be a central character in a lot of ways.
She's a chaos agent mostly.
Yeah. It's not a reliable anchor for everything. I guess that's it. I don't have anything else to say about Mugato, Gumato, or we'll always have Tom Paris. If you have anything, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just go to final thoughts. But that's it for these episodes of Lower Decks.
The one other joke that I do feel like was tailor-made for me is at a certain point when Mariner has been captured by the Ferengi, and the Ferengi are talking about, latinum and stuff. She says to them, you can just replicate stuff, right? Why do you need latinum? You guys are dumb. And I feel like we've had that conversation multiple times on this show.
Wealth is Star Trek found wealth in other places, I guess. That's why the Maquis are still fighting about their home in the military zone of the Cardassians and Federation, because that's their planet. Damn it. You could go to a million other planets, but that's their planet. Yep. This is not the first appearance of the Ferengi on the show, right? I think we've seen Ferengi
I don't remember.
On this one. I can't remember where. I feel like I've seen them in a
we didn't even talk about,
but maybe it is the first time.
We didn't even talk about the tertiary plot in the Mugato episode about the fake ship thing, where he blames the green alien guy, the Paul F. Tompkins alien, blames the destruction of a ship on Starfleet and then pulls one over on the captain. That story, I think that story works better than either of the two subplots in the Tom Paris episode, because there's like a really clear through line of what that story's about, which is the captain. While all this other crazy stuff is going on, the captain encounters this alien and thinks that she destroys his ship. So then they get into this conversation about how does they make that right. It turns out to be a con, and she gets one back over on him at the end. It's a very clear beginning, middle, and end kind of story, in a way that the Tom Paris thing and the Shrax is not dead thing doesn't have. And so I think those stories are, when they tell the stories like this captain story, I think those smaller secondary and tertiary plots work a lot better.
Yeah. I would agree with that. There's something about the scale of that plot. It's almost unmemorable but effective at the same time. Just trying to see if there's I'm just looking at if there's anything creepy throwback to Last Outpost style Ferengi. Yeah, I guess that's their whips and stuff like that. So I couldn't find anything about whether or not it's the first Ferengi. But I guess we'll go to final thoughts at this point. But if you enjoyed the content today, you can support the show at patreon.com/thepensky file. It's the best way to support us. A couple dollars a month, you get extra podcasts. You get the ability to vote on what we talk about. We're going to be doing trivia this month. Yeah, because this comes out in a couple days. We'll be doing trivia this month, me versus Clay. We'll have a patron refereeing that knockdown brawl.
I feel like
two of us.
There should be a secondary category that might be a little bit more evenly matched.
I always say just do like online Trivial Pursuit, just go through the random categories. The Discordians believe in you, Clay. Though they think that you'll be able to do it. And
are we going to do this as a live stream?
Not that I have any faith.
We can do this as a live stream so I can cheat and have people slip me answers.
We could do it. Yeah, we could do it. That's true. We could do it with the patrons as a live stream. I just I owe a lot to this of just I had the Star Trek encyclopedia, and I remember reading it before school in the morning as like eating a bowl of cereal was just on the table beside me and just like looking at the book. It's really, I think that was the formative thing that made so much of this crap stick in my head. It's just reading the pages.
Now it sounds like you're trying to like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron Me, where he goes out to breakfast with Lou Ferrigno and he's like psyching him out by telling him how good he is and stuff. It's like, I don't need to know that you know this stuff better than I do. It's a running thing on the show. I don't remember anything.
I'm just trying to explain where this garbage comes from, I guess. And it's like, I wish I was better at math in school.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way.
I wish I had gotten a job that went into engineering, but instead the Star Trek Encyclopedia book knocked out all my my free hard drive space.
Yeah, I always think about how I wish the stuff that I have will never forget was more practical than Blade Runner trivia and a complete working knowledge of the X-Men comics from 1972 to 1995.
Yeah, why is remembering mathematical theorems not as like physiologically satisfying
I don't know.
as like knowing how many shields Captain America had during his career and stuff like that? There's some weird disconnect there. I guess it rewards hard work, and that's the difference. That's it. So we'll do trivia at some point. The patreon.com/the Penske File if you want to support the show there. And as always, our Captain Tier supporters, there's a flip-flop at the top. Samuel Custer is now our #1 patron. Thank you, Samuel. And the rest of the captains, special thank you. Tarek Latif, Joy Mango, Kyle Barrett, Mike Martin, Andrew Cherlog, Matt Ross, Christian Pouch, Michael Pond, Matt Cutler, Nick Sergi, Graham Santos, Sean, Bradley Killens, Brandon Howells, Dwayne Hackett, Walter Teen Hero, Kevin Reyes, my tongue is broken, Jordan Cooper, Russell Elledge, Stephen Minton, HH28, Darth Mosk, Derek Zajac, Paul Roscoe, Jacob 123, Point Extra G, Patrick Seba, Dave Davies, Johnny Franceschi, Mike Harris, Captain Brazen, Eric Santuan, Jake Hughes Gamer, Kevin Lowry, Corey Martin, William Scheisler, Rayhan Jaffer, Nick the Rat, Disbrutta, Soylent Blue, Zane Majors, Olivier Pardue, Ed Mark Starr, Grappa John Zorn, Retail, Tom Hickey, Jose Hunter, ZWNF Remixes, Captain McMunchausen, James McLennan, Beal, Jonas, Tommy Tango, Tuvix Must Die, and Chris McLaughlin, and Mutilated Puppets. Thank you, everybody, for supporting the show. Hope you're enjoying.
Do you have these listed in order of who pays the most money?
No, it's lifetime support. So it's not their monthly pledge. It's their lifetime of how long it's been going. And not by date, but it is monetary, but it's not by date. I could list them as date, I suppose, but that won't change ever. There's no horse race aspect to that. Thanks very much, guys, for supporting the show. We much appreciate it. You're making Voyager possible. All right, so Lower Decks. We don't rate these things. There's no patron comments, so I guess we're just done. Outside of our final thoughts, I don't know. I'm glad. Every time I try to wrap up my final thoughts, it sounds like I don't like the show, which is not true. I feel like I'm floundering for something to say about it, though. I think a lot of the time. If I were to change one thing about this, it would be its sort of character work that it's choosing to do. I think there's space for all the references, all the jokes, and everything like that. I would like these characters to move into a place where they become a list of crew members where if someone were saying rank the crews, the Star Trek crews, I would feel okay inserting them somewhere in there instead of just being like the lower decks crew, whatever. They don't, to me, they don't feel like they really connect in even a way that Enterprise, which I consider to be bottom of the barrel in terms of a crew, is I would rank an Enterprise crew above these guys because I at least know Archer and T'Pol and Trip and stuff like, and Phlox. Like, Lower Decks hasn't gotten there. It's only been one season and a couple episodes, but it feels like it's constructed differently, that it might have a harder time actually getting there. And I wonder if it ever will get there or see the need to get there.
I think it can, because I think we know that this show is capable of doing that because they have in the past. They have given us really good character work. They just don't do it as consistently as I think they could. The first season, if I remember correctly, we didn't really start to get into what they were doing until the last half of the season, or last quarter of the season even, when they really started doing some interesting things and telling some interesting stories. So it's not impossible, and I think they show flashes of it in these episodes they've done so far. But yeah, there's something, it's like they just haven't let it click into that gear yet. In a way that I think is super satisfying. However, I do enjoy the show. I'm not champing at the bit to watch it. Like the fact that if we're doing two at a time and I'm just watching both at the same time, it's not like I'm really going out of my way to watch them when they air.
Yeah, I don't either.
But when I do watch them, I come away with a smile on my face, which is really the most I can really ask for, because I think that they're generally satisfying stories to a certain point, and it's a fun show.
Would you say, final question to you before we go, would you say the second season is fundamentally any different than the first season? Is there a change, if anything, that you see in the show, these 4 episodes compared to the first
I think
10?
the biggest change is the decentralization of the stories, because they were very much more Boimler focused, and so far they have not been. And so I think they're spreading it out a little bit more. And I think maybe that's part of their growing process too, is like that's a different attempt, a different style than the first season. And it might take them a little bit to kind of dial that in to see what the right mix is and what kind of stories they can tell. And it's a change that I welcome, because I think those side characters can be really interesting if they let them be.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see the senior officers get a storyline, one of them at least, or something. Like do a reverse Lower Decks where it focuses on them for an episode, and then the Lower Decks characters are just not there. Because I feel that the secondary cast is almost equally as developed as our main characters in a lot of ways. Like I feel the same level of character development and understanding of what those characters are. And in some ways, I think that the secondary characters are actually sketched out better in terms of what their joke is than Tendi is, for instance. Like, I don't think that Tendi is particularly well designed as like, oh, the obvious Tendi joke is to go here with her. Where I can see that for Ransom, I can see that for Shrax, I can see that for the engineer guy that's voiced by Paul. What's it? Yeah. Paul Scheer. Yeah, like even him, I see him. He's like the never sort of like, hey, what's going on, guys? That kind of a thing. So I would like to see some more of those guys carry a story for every once in a while, just because I think that they're an interesting group. I don't really care for the Doctor. I think she's a little bit too one note.
Yeah, the Doctor is much like all the Doctors in Star Trek history. They kind of have one thing that they do over and over again.
Yeah, she's just grumpy. Yeah. I think it's just referencing the fact that they're all grumpy.
Yeah. And I really like the Captain too. I would like to see more of the Captain, because the Captain is. I really like what they do with her, where she goes out of her way to be like considerate to the point of fault, you know, because I feel like that's what she does more often than not, is like she will do something by the book to the point of it being the wrong thing to do, and then ultimately she just looks like an idiot for not seeing what the truth of the situation was. And then she obviously, when she figures it out, she ends up getting hers back, which I like. So yeah, I wish they did. I'm more interested in that than I am in her and Mariner being related.
Yes.
So yeah, I would like to see more of that crew. I could take or leave Ransom, honestly. I feel like they did some interesting stuff with him briefly in the last season. But even he's
pretty one note as well.
He technically got an episode this season when he turned into the giant god.
That's true. He became the villain of the episode. Yeah, the antagonist. Yeah, he's. I get the thing. He's got his run into action and his shirt explodes off him thing. Like that's kind of the Ransom joke. Is that Shrek's is a version of that I think is actually potentially funnier than Ransom's is, where it's a gung ho-ness that is almost like animalistic or animal-like is how I would define him, and I think that's.
I think
cute.
We've mentioned this before, but does it feel weird that he's not a Klingon? Because I feel like he has a lot of Klingon tendencies, especially in the Mugato episode.
It feels weird that he's a Bajoran.
Yeah.
Could be another race, just not Bajoran. And also, maybe the final thought before we go, wasn't Kayshawn Shrek's replacement? Wasn't
I think
the
so.
Case in the previous episode?
Yes. I think that was the case. Yeah. Yeah.
I thought maybe that was a little bit of Kayshawn wasn't a great character and didn't really live up to the joke potential, I don't think. But I was a little bit surprised Strax came back because I was like, I thought they just replaced him with a new guy, and that's
we also
because I was also I saw that the voice actor for Shrax is in the credits of episodes where Shrax is not there yet, so I thought that he was voicing the Kayshawn character. I thought they just passed him off to a new animated person, and that would be the way that they continue using that actor.
Is that Fred Testeschiori? That guy's a big animation voice actor, so it wouldn't surprise me if he's doing multiple voices. Multiple voices. We also didn't mention the Klingon acid punk, which I appreciated. I look forward to someone on the internet making an actual album out of that music.
Yeah. What makes something acid?
I guess.
Trippy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did
just a drug influence.
I really liked the explanation of the one band who actually had a group of disgraced Klingons on stage actively trying to make amends or something like that. That was good.
We're done. That's it for We'll Always Have Tom Paris and Mugato Gumato. Patreon.com/Pensacafal. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
September's here, so Amanda and I will be hitting Jason Goes to Hell the final Friday on our Patreon coverage of the Friday the 13th series. If you like no Jason in your Jason movie and slimy worms and heart eating, you will love this movie. And we've got
I love all that
who
stuff.
doesn't, right? When you think about
squirmy worms.
Yeah, when you think about Friday the 13th, you think about eating hearts and worms that jump body to body. And Badass, we're coming up to the end of Badass. We're going to be done with the entirety of Batman the Animated Series pretty soon. We'll probably take a break and then move on to Batman Beyond. And Rotten Horror Picture Show continues on.
That's about it. I've been streaming every once in a while on Twitch. If people care about that, you can join the Discord or follow me on Twitter. I post when I do it there. That's been fun. I was thinking I was going to do for Halloween, play some... I've never played through Resident Evil the whole way. Maybe I'll play Resident Evil the whole way through. Maybe do that on stream. Might be interesting.
I still want to figure out... I've never tried doing that. I think it would be fun for a bunch of us to play the Friday the 13th game. If it's still running. I actually haven't played it in a while, but... I have to figure out how to work the Twitch.
I think it's you have a PS4, right? I think it just does it natively through the PS4. I don't know how it works in terms of microphones and stuff like that, but it is possible to do. Is that crossplay? Is that PC people can play PS4?
No, unfortunately not.
No. Okay. Okay, that's the other downside to it. But yeah, we can figure all that stuff out. But it's out there if people are interested in watching me stream. I like it for the brain exercise. It is remarkably hard to do something and talk at the same time. So it's like my version of Sudoku, where I'm like, maybe this is strengthening my brain and I'm not going to get Alzheimer's or something. That's it. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. We'll be back with the next Lower Decks episodes, which are 5 and 6. I don't know what they're called at this point. Enterprise is continuing as always. And then I have my guest episodes of Star Trek coming up, too. Modi's just came out. Lore Reloaded comes out soon. And then after that is up in the air at this point, but we'll get some few more people to revisit old Star Trek episodes. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.